budgets. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I need to have somebody make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda is adopted, and I will turn it over to Kathy, who's the chairman of the school board.
Is this on? Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's important to hear your voice and ask questions. I'm going to do a couple of things. Talk a little bit about the new proposal that Governor Scott has, but I'm not going to get into the weeds of it because it's kind of complicated. And I can't answer a lot of the questions because the committees that have developed this and also the proposal that they put out, they haven't really dove into all the aspects of what's going to happen. And we're looking at maybe a couple, 3 years down the road. The other thing I want to talk just briefly is the Vermont Rural School Community Alliance. I think it's a good thing, and it's one of the things that our last meeting, school board meeting, our board voted to become part of it. And that's going to give us a lot of information and maybe a bigger voice as to what's going to be coming down the pike with this new educational proposal. So bear with me. I'm going to be short, I hope. We started our school year with some long-awaited repairs. Students were welcomed with a newly painted school, and you know it's not white anymore. I think it's beautiful. We resurfaced the driveway and the play area with new playground equipment, and these were made available through our ESSER funds. Our raised beds were later built for the gardening projects through the spring, summer, and fall projects. And we couldn't do this without a lot of volunteer help that made this possible. Unfortunately, ESSER and COVID funds are no longer available, and the Vermont school districts, like ours, are facing some unknown territory as we move forward to the year 26-27 with future school funding. It's unclear how the state of Vermont will govern these ever-changing formulas on how schools will be funded and the impact it will have on small schools. Vermont has a small school funding crisis that the Commission of the Future of Public Education has a mission to solve. The sustainability of our schools and reducing the tax burden for Vermonters is a goal. But to achieve this, hard and difficult choices may be necessary if we are to meet the needs of all students. We have been fortunate in using our surplus funding wisely to help bring down the budget for Athens Grafton, but this too may fall short in the short-lived. I employ community members, parents, and families members, your voice, your concerns as it relates to the future of our school's viability. Grafton is unique in many ways, and our school is the heart of our community. Without this, Grafton would be a pretty dim place. You may ask, what can you do about this? Well, you're here. Get involved, be informed what is happening to our school, attend school board meetings and community forums. We've had a couple already. Your voice is important, and it makes a difference when decisions are made that affect your child's future. We have dedicated teachers and staff who put their heart and soul to see that each child is learning and improving each day. It's a happy place where kids smile and our staff works the hardest to see that every child's needs are met. I want to thank our school board members and welcome our new member from Athens, Mark Berman, and Grafton's Mary Howard Fetter in representing Bellas Falls Union High School and the SU board. We are still in need of Athens representative to this board. Remember that each board member has a vote when important decisions are made on these boards and they impact the future of the school and the student success. So we now have a new thing coming out from the governor. And what it wants to do is to take 119 school districts and put them into 5 districts. So what that means is that our little school and other schools like it, we're not going to have a voice. We're not going to have our local control. It's going to be controlled by 5 school districts by their board. So there's 5 boards that are going to conduct how we manage 84,000 students. And as I said, as I started, they don't have all the answers. They don't have a plan really set. So what our board did, we belong to the Rural School Community Alliance. And its goal is to encourage legislatures to pursue meaningful property tax reforms that strengthen our Vermont future for our kids, while maintaining support for high quality, equitable, cost-effective rural schools. I don't want to get into all the stuff about the taxes and the budget, how we formulated it. That's why we have Hardy Merrill on our board. He's assured me he's got 10 pages of a report here. Oh, 8 pages. And we have Andy Haas here, our superintendent, and I know you may have more questions for him around the new proposal that Governor Scott has put in place. So I want to thank you. I want to thank our board members, and I'm just going to leave it for Hardy Merrill.
Moving on from what's happening at the state level, which really, there's nothing we can really do about. What does it mean for Grafton this year? So first, we have a warning that will be voted upon. It has 4 articles in it. The first one is to hear the report of the Athens Grafton district officers and to take action thereon. The second article is to shall the voters of the Athens Grafton School District approve the school board to expend $1,632,408, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. The Athens Grafton School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $13,146.22, which is 2.95% higher than per pupil spending in the current year. And I'll have some more detail to sort of elaborate what that all means. Article 3 is shall the voters of the Athens Grafton School District apply the sum of $187,630 from the fiscal year 2024 fund balance to reduce expenditures in the fiscal year 2027 in order to reduce taxes. Article 4, shall the voters approve an annual compensation to school directors in the amount of a board chair, $800, board members, $700, and district treasurer, $250, district clerk, $250, an additional stipend for members of the supervisory union board, $250. So that is the warning, and that's what you'll all be voting upon at town meeting. But let's get into the nitty gritty of what all of this means to Athens and to Grafton. If we could put up the first schedule. I'm going to identify what the key elements of a homestead tax rate are for the voters. Number one, you have school budgets for both Athens and Grafton and Bellas Falls High School. Secondly, you've got revenue that offsets the expenditures of these budgets. That can be in surpluses, AOA grants, etc. The third item is the long-term weighted ADM, which is identified and developed by the Agency of Education. And I'll explain that a little bit more detail in a minute. The next item is the yield, which is a number that is set by the legislature, and it's set to balance the budget of the education fund between its revenues that are coming in and its appropriation and funds that are going out. Then we have a blending of our two school districts into one tax rate. That's Bellas Falls High School and it's Grafton Athens School. And finally, this is all manipulated by Grafton's and Athens CLA to get to the final tax rate that one pays in 4 installments in Grafton 4 times a year. Just a note on the long-term weighted ADM is the law was passed in 2022, and it's intended to even the playing field between districts by giving more weight to low-income students, English language learners, and students at rural schools on the understanding that these groups are more expensive to educate. So what that means is we aren't coming up with students strictly that are in this school or in 7th and 8th grade when tuition students have added weight applied by the state because we're a small school. We live in sparse areas, and economically, a lot of our area is disadvantaged. So they add weight and they give us additional pupils, which is good. By law, also the CLA, all property in Vermont is to be valued 100% of fair market value every year. The CLA is the Vermont's method of accomplishing this for every town and can change every year based on increases or decreases in the real estate market. This is a significant item, which we'll get into in a little later. Okay, we put the next slide up. What we have here is the WNESD Grafton Athens key budget info. And what we have here is 3 columns. We've got the first column is the actual expense for 24-25, the proposed expense for 25-26, and whether it's favorable or unfavorable. You can see that this year we have reduced, or the school, Athens Grafton, and the administration has reduced the budget from last year by $189,592. So that's obviously favorable to our tax rate and to the school system. The revenue, last year, we had $250,000 surplus that went against the actual spending, and this year we have $250,083. So the net education spending is $1,382,325 this year, favorable by $189,675. Unfortunately, though, our long-term weighted ADM, which is pupils, was 123.1 last year. This year, it's 105.14. That reflects the fact that the school's system is shrinking between Grafton and Athens, and the high school, actually. So that's down by 17.95 long-term weighted pupils, which is 14.5%. And what that shakes out to is an education spending per pupil increase of 2.95%. So that's the first piece. The long-term weighted ADM, the way that's developed by the state, they take a 2-year average ADM plus state place students, And that was number in 24-25 was 5661, and that went down to 51.03, or by 5.58 students. And you can see the grade weight went down by 0.32 students. The economic disadvantaged weight went down by 9.34 students. The sparsity weight went down by 0.84, and the small school weight went down by 1.87. So that's the total 17.95 reduction. If that continues, that will not be beneficial to the school system. We need students. Now let's look at the other component of our spending, which is the Bellas Falls High School. Last year, in 2024-25, they spent $7,941,496. And they offset that with revenue of $100,000 to come up with education spending of $7,841,496. And they had a long-term weighted ADM pupil-wise of 713.18, which resulted in education spending of $10,995.11. The proposed this year, which will be voted upon, is a budget of $8,536,884, which is up by $595,388. Revenue of $219,000, which is to be voted upon. It hasn't been approved yet. It needs to be voted when we vote on the high school budget, which would be $119,000 favorable, and there's $25,000 of other miscellaneous revenue, which totals $8,292,622, which is divided by a long-term weighted ADM of 653.77. In other words, they lost an ADM of 59.41. And what that results in is an increase in your education spending per pupil of 15.36%, $1,689.20. So let's talk about, before we go to the next schedule, we're going to talk about the yield. On February 11th, the new preliminary education fund outlook was presented to the Ways and Means Committee up at the State House. And in that, they presented two options. The first option is one presently where they stand with all the sources of funds and all the appropriations of funds and what it would take to balance that budget. What would the yield have to be, and what would the non-homestead property tax rate have to be? And what they have come up with is, for a non-homestead property tax rate, 1.773, and for a yield number, 8,292. The second option would assume that the legislature approves a general fund transfer from the general fund at the state to the education fund of $77.2 million. If that happens, that will balance out to a 1.695 non-homestead rate and an $8,664 homestead yield. So what does this all mean? I'm not sure whether you can, hopefully you can all read that schedule up there, but basically you start at the top and you have your expenditures, which we just reviewed between the high school and the WNUESD for both Grafton and Athens. They're the same. If you look at the long-term weighted ADM, which we discussed, Grafton is 105.15 and the high school 653.77. And that yields an education per pupil, which we just looked at, 13,146.22 and 12,684.31 for the high school. Now it's nice to note that the excess spending per pupil this year is 15,926. So neither of those numbers is close to having a penalty applied. So the education spending is then divided by the adjusted homestead property yield. That's this 8,292 number, which I just referenced. And when you do that across the board, it goes all the way across for both towns. You get a homestead tax rate of $1.5854 for the WNUESD and the high school of 1.5297. And then for Athens, 1.5854 and 1.5297. So the next piece that we talked about is you have to blend these two rates together, and they're blended based on the number of kids that are in this school, plus the tuition kids in 7th and 8th grade, and the kids that are in the high school. And those percentages that were identified a couple of weeks or months ago was 61.9% in this school and 38.1% in the high school. So you multiply those numbers, percentages, times those tax rates, and you get a blended rate, which is 1.5642 for Grafton and 1.5649 for Athens. That is then equalized for the CLA depending on your statewide adjustment factor, which is provided by the state of Vermont. And they have identified that the statewide adjustment average is 72.36. And that means that Grafton's, which is presently at 71.92, has to be adjusted upwards to the tune of 99.39%. You divide that into the number, and that gives you your final tax rate of 1.5738 for Grafton and 1.5498 for the high school, for Athens, excuse me. Now those compared to last year for Grafton, that's a 22.40 increase. For Athens, that's an 8.22 increase. So Grafton's taxes would be up 16.59 or 5.6. This is probably a pessimistic number, hopefully. If we look at the next schedule, this is using the other yield number, which is $8,664. And if you take it right down to the homestead tax rate, you'll see that has reduced the rate to 1.5173 for the WNUESD and 1.4640 for the high school. And if you blend it again, and then you apply the a statewide adjustment factor, your tax rate now comes out to 1.5064, 5062 for Grafton, and 1.4833 for Athens. So now that's reduced it to 15.64 cents for Grafton or 1.57 cents for Athens. So basically, we're probably going to end up somewhere in between there to some extent, Grafton. And Athens should end up between 1 and 6 or 7 cents. So what's the, what sort of makes up this increase? Well, if you go to the last schedule, the Bellows Falls High School increase of per spending of 15.71% probably resulted in about 7 cents increase in our tax rate and 7 cents in Athens. The Athens Grafton education spending rate of 2.95% increase was another 2.83 cents. And then for Grafton, the grand list adjustment to 100% of fair market value was worth about 11.76 cents. Now, the reason for that is we did a reappraisal of Grafton in 2021. And we had 54, compares, it's done by the state. The state compares all of your valid sales divided by the assessed value of those properties. In the reappraisal year of 2021, we had 54 sales, which were appraised at 101.87%. And that had a COD of 7.4%. In 2022, we had sales and 1 year drops off and a new year adds in. So we had 46 sales at 101%, And we had 15 sales at 22, at 70%, which reduced our CLA to 97.95% with a COD of 11.33%. In 2023, we still had 32 sales at 100%, but now we had 15 plus 9 sales, or 24 sales that were down in the 70% range. If anybody who lives in Grafton, they realize that the sale prices are out of sight in this town for the last 2 to 3 years. In 2024, all of those 100% sales dropped off, and now we have 41 sales, which result in a CLA of 71.92%. And that's what causes a big increase in our taxes, in addition to high school, and a slight increase related to the school system. So that's what I've done. Are there any questions? I would expect something.
Are you gonna have another reappraisal?
Yeah.
Another appraisal. Jeff got another appraisal.
About another appraisal?
Yeah.
This isn't gonna work ahead of those mics,
Okay.
ahead of those speakers.
Let's take one of these then. Oh, wow.
Another appraisal?
Yeah.
We have there is a consideration to do a statistical reappraisal. You can do a statistical within 5 years of the last one. And we could do that in 2026. And we presently have a quote to do that. But again, all that's going to do is it's going to make your value that's assessed now up to what it is being assessed at taxed at, okay? It's already being taxed at 100% because of the CLA. So all that does is raise up your assessed value to match what theoretically is your fair market value.
But the cost of a statistical reappraisal is cheaper than doing
Right.
the one that we did in 2021.
Much cheaper.
So we are saving money there.
39,000.
As
It
a-
probably only cost the town $4,000 to $5,000 to do that, based on what has been given to us by the state to reappraise. They give us about $6,000 a year. So we have 18,000 right now. We get another 10 to 12,000 between now and the appraisal. And we have some money in the budget already that would cover it, and then we're short like 4,000 or 5,000. But if we waited to do a full reappraisal, it would cost 70 to 80,000 bucks. So
This question it might be for Andy, but the governor's made a proposal to stop universal meals for breakfast and lunch for all students in the district. I mean, in the state, and I see zeros in our budget. When would that proposal hit if it were to be passed? Would that be a year from September?
I'm looking at.
I know,
Connor,
I
our
had,
new business manager as well, with me, so, I don't, that be a year, but what was that?
At least. Don't phase
I
it.
can't hear it.
I said at least, don't phase it again.
They'll phase it in. I didn't read that in the proposal. Okay. It's a concern. Have you all discussed that in Grafton?
what's that?
No.
Well, I think a concern for Grafton too is the fact that our long-term weighted ADM would still continue to drop. We're taking a 2-year average going backwards. And every year, a year drops off and a new year comes on, and just like the CLA. If you aren't getting more students and they're going away, your long-term weighted, what they add to the students that you have are also gonna go down. So it's important for the school that we have students in our school. And we do have 1 tuition student this year, just I believe. We could use more. Yes,
Question on that CLA, and there's a lot there, and thank you very much for all the work to get us wherever we are right now. You don't have a crystal ball of Alaska anyways, that CLA is 70, that's a big number, that's a bad number. Is that a correction or an expectation from year to year moving forward? And I know you can't predict house sales and all that stuff.
I couldn't hear you really. I'm a little hard of hearing, so,
The CLA number, the 70%,
yes,
is that a correction in a blip? Or the new ad norm that we need to apply?
that's the normal right now.
Going forward year to year.
That's taking the sales for the last 3 years and averaging them versus what they're assessed at, and it's 71.92%. And the statewide again is 72.34. This isn't a Grafton issue.
Right.
Grafton actually is caught up. If we hadn't done the reappraisal back in 21, we would have got hit with these type of numbers much sooner. Probably in 2021 or 22. We would, so we really have gotten a benefit for 2 years in our taxes. Because we didn't experience, because we had all those 100% sales were offsetting what was really happening in the market. In 21, 22, and 23, and 24, and today. We just had a sale the other day. This house was sold for 300,000 2 years ago. It went for 500,000 plus.
What you can guarantee that's not age of parents or kids buying those kinds of homes in this area.
It's a problem.
So you're saying that's the new normal, you don't think the COVID crisis drove that up, and I think you already answered it, saying, the recent sales.
Yeah.
Was 500,000.
So we hope you'll approve the budgets. I would also like to add one other little fact here. The average homestead property tax rate that came out of the same document that has the yields and the non-res rates has, an average homestead tax rate is 1.66, okay? Both of the high school and the Grafton school are under that. They were in the 150s. And after, even with the increased yield, that they make a 77.2 million general fund transfer, it would be 1.587, which is still above what our numbers are today that we're looking at possibly. So everything isn't all bad here.
Are there a lot of students homeschooled? No?
Andy sent out a report the other day that had 10 homeschool students in it. And I'm not, some of those, were they all for the elementary school, or were some of them high school as well? I'm not sure.
Those are all elementary. And you have to, so like a student was a Grafton student, but that was a should be middle school age. So we tried to use the numbers, but those are the numbers that were reported to the state. So. Not that I don't trust the numbers, or I just can't remember the numbers. So I'm looking it up. But so yeah, there's 10 students currently right now that are homeschooling. And I believe that the majority of those have been homeschooling for years. So they're not new homeschool, you know, because typically when a family decides to homeschool their students, their personal beliefs in homeschooling, and so when you look at it, if you're seeing lots of kids that are all of a sudden choosing to go homeschool real quick, that's one indicator, but if they've been homeschooling for multiple years and their families, so that's the reason why we're seeing that go homeschooling.
Thank you, Marty. I want to just echo what Dave said about how much we appreciate
what you and the board members have done in terms of helping us understand this
I
budget.
can't understand you.
I want to ask a question about two school budgets. First of all, the Bellas Falls High School budget. Could you help us understand, Andy, if I understood this correctly, that the budget is going up even though the student population is going down? Why would that be the case?
So one of the reasons why that, so the high school is actually reducing their staff by almost 4 FTEs, full FTE. The reason why the budget is going up is because of a couple of factors, but mostly because of the bonds that have been approved. So the roof that was put on the high school, that was a $2 million bond that equates to about 2% increase overall. But so that's one of the biggest drivers in it. There's also another driver that's in every district's budget is the SU costs have gone up because we're seeing an increase in students with needs and special needs. And we're actually getting almost $300,000 less from the state on state aid for special education. So we're seeing more students with higher needs that with special education, but we're also seeing a reduction in the number of dollars that we're getting in. I think those are the two big drivers there.
There's another additional bond for the driveway, which is equally as expensive to the roof, correct? You
Correct.
mentioned, yes, there are 2 bonds. That's
But
why,
not in this budget yet.
that's the
So
following
in this budget, there's only the first bond. Next year, there will be a second bond that goes in there, so.
Thank you. And I was just wondering with respect to the Grafton Athens Elementary School, the 2.945% increase. Is that net the 250 from the surplus, or is that the top line?
No,
increase?
that's the net,
Okay, so without the 250,
yes.
I think that's important to know. Thank you. And just one final point. What would the budget increase have been without the 250? I can't do that in my head.
About 17 cents more.
And I remember Kathy at a school board meeting 2 years ago or so, we identified, let's say 25 students who were being homeschooled, and we put together, I think there was a discussion about putting the plan together to call them and see if we could attract them to the elementary school. Did we attract 15 of them?
I think
What
Angela
happened?
probably can address that, because I've encouraged her to call those parents, or at least encourage students to come in, maybe for a gym class, or an event that's coming on, or a musical that they could be part of, or at least come and see, get into the building. So she could address that. I think we have,
This year we had 2 students.
Yeah.
There's actually 9 homeschool students, one of them is a 7th grader who's still appearing on our list. But 2 of those students came on in person.
right. And we have one Westminster student coming here. And as Angela pointed out before, we have one Chester student that's coming in. So if we can get more of those students coming in, it would be great.
Yeah.
Because we do some great things
Many
here.
of us here attended Diane Thompson's play, her Christmas play,
Mhm.
and I have never seen more children since I've lived in Grafton. They were on the stage and they did a fabulous job, and they were in the audience. And I couldn't help ask myself the question, where are these kids going to school? I just feel like there are more children that could go to school here, but yeah.
Well, it's the affordability of homes. And the Airbnbs, aren't helping. Sorry, but that's how it is. And it's not just this town, a lot of towns.
Thank you, Kathy.
Andy, did you want to say anything about the Governor Scott's proposal?
I don't know how much I can say about
I
it.
know.
It's quite frustrating. We have been given preview that there might be something coming. We didn't know it was gonna be as drastic as a 5-district, proposal. And Kathy, as you previewed a little bit with that, proposal, the idea is that they use the boundaries, just so you understand, they use the boundaries that the superintendent's already used to kind of create regions. So I belong to the southeast superintendent's region. And so that was used, that those boundaries are 5 regions of superintendents, and we have 13 superintendents in our region. And so we go everywhere from Norfolk, all the way down to Brattleboro and out to Whitingham. So we have quite a large region. And the idea would be to create 5 boards within that region. And so you would all elect 1 person from your ward. And then there'd be 5 wards in each region. And those would be the 5 elected officials to serve on a school board that would make decisions for all schools in that region. And it also does set a minimum class size, which is around 12 for kindergarten and 15, don't quote me on my numbers, please. 15 for first grade through 4th grade, 5th grade, and then it would bump up to 18 for 6 through 12. So it would be that minimum class size average. And basically what that is saying is if you can't meet those standards, you would then have to shutter the school. Especially if there was a school about 10 minutes away where those kids could be absorbed. So that's the real short, brief part about it. Obviously, from a superintendent perspective, talking with my colleagues, we have a lot of concerns around it. My understanding was that was actually introduced as a bill today. I sent it to you. Thank you. I mean, there was about the 5th person now. I haven't seen her yet. So yeah, I read through quite a bit. I have some summaries that we've been putting together. There are a lot of counter proposals out there. The rural school community is looking at a counter proposal that would basically create larger supervisory unions. So the difference between a supervisory union and a supervisory district is that a supervisory district has just 1 board that decides all the budgets for all the schools within that supervisory district. The supervisory union is what we have. So we have 4 independent school districts and an SU board. And so the Rural School Alliance is proposing making larger supervisory unions to maintain local control. So that it would be more meetings for someone like myself, but it would provide this opportunity and continue this opportunity. So that is one of the counter proposals. There's been another proposal just to create less, or create about 14 to 20 supervisory districts. So not 5, but 14 to 20. So you're going to hear numbers flying all over the place. As some people have kind of said, this is going to take a lot of time getting to the legislature. I've heard 5 years before anything really sugars out. I've heard as far as 10, but that would probably be pretty long going there. So I don't know exactly where it's going to kind of come out. But we're trying to get on as much as possible to get the information. So I'm on what they call a sprint team around special education, because we don't know how that would even function within this larger entity. I can tell you we haven't even met yet. We were told we were going to meet 2 weeks ago, so I don't know how that's playing out. As far as universal meals, because that came up, I'm on a group. I'm in a hopper to be called to testify at any time because it is a benefit to our students throughout our whole SU and throughout all of Vermont. So there's a lot there, but I mean, we're just trying to still figure out and we're looking at what is best educationally for our students within our towns and our SU. So that's not my focus.
You might also mention about the funding, how the foundation formula versus, local, that's another big
You want me to
issue.
talk about funding here, so I got two experts here, but I'll try and butcher it. So right now, there's this convoluted way of figuring out how much money we're gonna get from the state for each student. And so they wanna go to what's called a foundational funding formula, where they set a number, and that's exactly how much you get to educate your kids, and it's around $13,000. And so the state would give you $13,000 per student. So let's just use Grafton as an example with a enrollment of 30. I'm just using that number because it's easy math for me. So you can take your 30, multiply it by 13,000. That's how much you get to educate those students. It costs much more than $13,000 to educate students in Grafton. It's closer to $40,000 if you do the just raw math.
I think they would use the long-term weighted ADM with that too, so it would be, it wouldn't be the 31 kids that you have in school here today or whatever, it would
Right,
be,
so we don't.
it would be whatever the long-term weighted ADM was at that one time.
So then what would happen is you as taxpayers would have to make a decision, you want to make up that difference. So let's say it ends up costing really, when we sugar it all out, a little under $16,000. So if they're giving us $13,000, do you want to raise your taxes additionally to fill that donut hole? So that's the foundational.
Yeah, basically, it's top down versus bottom up, that's what it is, really.
And there'd be other things for special education, we would get extra money, just like we're getting money now for, if we have the LL students, so that would come through the SU and kind of, get absorbed there. I am gonna be pushing out, there's a video out, I'm gonna put it out, we'll try and get it out on our website. It actually looks like it does a pretty good job, it's about an hour long. But really explaining the importance of small schools and the importance of, why we have small schools in Vermont. And I'll tell you, I didn't grow up in Vermont, and it's great education. I've been like, what, you probably are all like, yeah, why is that new? It's new to me to kind of really hear someone really explain how important it is and why it comes out. So we're looking at pushing that out pretty soon.
Thank you, Andy.
Sure.
Courtney, would you just confirm that it costs $40,000 per student to educate people at this school?
Well, no, if you divide it by the number of kids in this school, which is 31 today, it would cost you close to that. But you gotta also add in, there's 31, plus there's 12 kids that go in the 7th and 8th grade. So there's really 40 something kids. I have the number here.
Wow.
Right now, we got 43 kids, I believe, that are in the 7th, 8th grade, K through
Eight.
K through 8. You got 12 in the 7th and 8th grade. And some of those are, go to Compass, some of them go to other schools. Their tuition. They either go to the Rockingham school, or they go to Green Mountain, they can go to Leland and Gray. With their tuition. And there's 31 kids in this school, I believe, today. It goes up and down one or two once in a while.
They can find that on this sheet.
Yeah, but this is more accurate, I think. This is like today.
Okay.
Marty, how many are tuition and what is brought for the dollar amount of tuition for those other operating schools?
What was the question?
How many are tuitioned out? How many are tuitioned out?
Well, your 7th and 8th grade are theoretically all tuition. Because we pay tuition to the middle school, Rockingham Middle School, for 7th and 8th graders. Or we pay tuition to Compass or to the Putney Grammar School? Or to, if somebody were to go to Leland and Gray, we pay a tuition there.
Are they set tuition across?
So it is a varied tuition, so when you pay another public school, you pay the public school's announced tuition rate. So if Leland Gray announces their tuition rate at $20,000, that's the cost you pay for the student to go to Leland and Gray. If the middle school sets theirs at $21,000, that's the amount paid. What's paid to the independent school is the state average, and that has gone up in the last few years, and it's sitting around 18,000 right now.
Is there a transparent place that tuition is listed per calendar year that each of those schools that do tuition do list? I'm just curious, the dollar amount versus 13,000 per pupil that we're doing here at Grafton versus the tuition that is at the higher.
Yeah, so Ed's telling me there is a website, the AOE has a website. I don't know, Vermont announced tuition, or I think it's on their website or something, and it'll come up with all the lists that's back of the year. So
What time, what month is that time? I was deciding that spring, like after.
So it's gotta come out sometime after all budgets are figured out and all that stuff. It's gotta come out before the new year because that's what we paid out. So right now, it is out, 24-25 is out right now, so it's probably,
Looking at student population, I know that other towns and even school boards are forming smaller committees to figure out how to get students in schools, what's happening, is the housing, homeschooling, that sort of committee happening here, is that being talked about?
We have the community forums that we're trying to get together. We've had a couple. So if we have folks coming together, and talk about that. And I know other schools outside our district are doing what you said. I know Londonderry's doing it, Manchester's doing it, because they want to do a regional middle school. And they've had lots of discussions. Our last meeting, we had some really good conversations about what's going on, not just in the state, but the federal changes that could be coming down to Vermont. And asking our legislatures and senators to get together with us to maybe make our voice louder to the legislators to promote small schools. It's in the works, but it's difficult to get all these people together.
Our high school is working hard to get dropouts, kids who are on the periphery to come back. And we've seen some really positive numbers there, growing size of children who literally dropped off and are actually coming back to school. So that's helping our numbers too. As a public.
Anything else? Well, thank you again, coming and hearing what, we're doing here at the school. And I guess we'll take it, have the town, the select board, for Grafton, and turn it over to, Joe.
Why? Why is it muting?
Yeah.
It's probably in this book. Usually that
Yeah, I'd like to call this section of the program tonight to order. Our budget is nowhere as complicated as the school budget is, thank God. Our budget is comprised by the select board with the help of Kim. And I just would like to say that with Kim's help, the board, it was a tough budget year because everything is so expensive. And we have the Walker Bridge and we have some mandates from the state. I think we try to do the best we could. And we're here to answer any questions that you might have about our budget. Or the warning or the warrants, or the warnings that are on here, if you have any questions about those, we're here to answer. Dave?
Really complex question, I'm afraid to ask you, but I gotta ask you, because I don't understand. Page 10. It's your revenue table. And I'm just looking at the first 3 columns. And I'm not an accountant, but it seems like one will be a plus, one will be a minus, and the third column is the sum. But as you go down, sometimes you're adding column A to B, sometimes you're subtracting column B from A. It's not in separate parentheses or anything else, and I can't figure out what's going on. That's a complex question, and I'm doing this size, but if you start with those numbers, sometimes you're adding, sometimes you're subtracting, you get that third column.
The columns are.
And if you look at the totals of each section, that sometimes they add, sometimes they subtract continues. From one to the other.
But this
Do you understand my question?
yes.
Yeah, I think so. But
Column number 4 is what we had budgeted for.
Right.
Column 3 is the difference between 1 and 2.
Yeah. So the difference between column 1 and column 2.
Yeah.
If it's an addition, it's because it was a increase or that it was not a loss in revenue. For example, property taxes voted and actual went down, and that's, so if that is gonna be a function of subtraction. Whereas,
Column B minus column A, and that's what's growing.
correct.
Yeah.
And then, so just going down.
You end up with a negative number there for parentheses.
Exactly. And if,
Second one, B minus A, that's a positive number.
correct.
Because it's actual,
I guess it does work out. there.
Money is increased. It does work out right ultimately. And the bottom, for example, state of Vermont current use funds, it's a positive, the actual is greater than what was voted. So that shows as,
So maybe these others all fall into that. For example, in licensing, the column A and B does not come out to column C. There's a $381 difference there somehow. And the same is down under charges for services. There's a $3,127. Seems like a discrepancy, and I just need the.
I don't see that discrepancy.
Your total charges for charging of the services.
Yes.
Kim, could you help us out here?
And maybe it does make sense, and I'm not an accountant, I can't figure it out.
Was the 3,000 on the charges for services, this second flow should have been that should have been charges, because that factor is because we only estimated 3,500 coming in, and we get 5,700, so that would get 3,000. So the target was right there. That's not. Let's see, $8. That's all down.
Final numbers are correct.
Focus on the actual, what's the focus of the actual effect, the votes are the line item.
So,
Does everybody understand that?
the thought was, so it would actually be a positive though, because you were hiring and was.
Right, maybe this with the brackets is on the table, only because it is in the balance.
Just.
It's the difference, yeah, it is the same. It's that.
I don't know what you're saying, so I can't.
No, I know. Kim?
That's why you made. Yes.
Well, we're not quite understanding how you're explaining this, and.
Yeah. The column voted, and then you've got your column actual. So now all the formulas all go through on the variance. Is what I'm saying. So you want to focus both on voted actual. Most of the variances are right, some of the brackets didn't get put on where they should have been.
Okay. Any other,
The bottom line.
any other questions? On the budget? Or that one on the money?
Yeah.
Wendy?
Can you explain to us how the fourth road crew member helps save money?
That was a fourth group number. Jen, you want to do that one? How the fourth man saves money? How does the fourth?
Member save money.
It's supposed to cut down on your overtime.
Okay.
And
John, can you put the microphone? Thank you. Great.
it's supposed to cut down on your overtime, which this is the first year of it, and the first year is not a good example because of the way the weather's been. We've had so many storms that it is not saved on overtime. It is probably increased it. So hopefully, as we go along, it will save. I think it makes it much easier to do projects with the fourth guy.
Just the higher flaggers.
Yes, some of the Wendy, some of the projects too that we do, we have to hire a flagger. Because when you're doing ditches, you have one person drawing the material and you have somebody else running the excavator, and then you have to have a flagger to shut the road down, and they're all little things that will save some money, but like, as John said, this is the first year really that we've done this, and we'll have to take a hard look at it next year.
So if you do, will you be prepared to cut the fourth person if it doesn't work? I mean, is that on the table at any point?
I don't think we can answer that question until we actually see what happens.
I would just point out that I think we have not had this person on board for very long. So we have only seen it mostly during the fall and winter season. I think as big projects come on over the summer, those kinds of projects where for, two people per truck, whatever, that need to have these projects done, we hopefully can see some costs reduced and some savings. I just think it's way too early to judge it, but I would think we'd reevaluate for sure. Hard to say how it will turn out.
I'll speak on it for you guys a little bit. Having a fourth guy, having three of us, one guy was always in the truck by himself. And it was a safety issue. Now we got 4 guys, so 2 guys can go together if there's a bad storm and 3 days.
Yeah, and you have to remember, one of the new members just started a few months back. So we really haven't had a full year of the full complement of highway crew.
And one of the reasons we had a fourth man too, so that there are a lot of projects that did not get done, like the ditching, tree removal. The state comes down with all these mandates, and every time you get a grant, you have to follow all the specs. So with the fourth person, it's hoped that the guys will get more projects done that have been delayed because they didn't have that extra person.
Yeah, and also to speak of that, there's a lot of projects that were neglected for many, many, many years that you don't realize. And now we're able to, with the extra person, we're able to start to deal with some of these projects like tree removal, fixing certain culvert ditches. There's just things that need to be done. And what happens, you always run out of time, so they go, well, we'll do it next year, and we'll put it off. So I think you'll see a big difference. Hopefully, with all the tree removal they did, well, it'll help the mud season. We'll get some light in some of these areas where sun couldn't shine. So we'll have to make an evaluation to see really what happens after a year and see where we are.
On a different subject, I would just like to go over the selectmen's itemized budget. It is up $132,000. And there's gonna be some reasons why it's up, and there's 5 things that stick out. And they make up most of the increase. And one of the biggest one is the Walker Bridge in the fall. That's $55,000. So that is part of it. The other thing is one of the town employees go on the health insurance, and that is $24,000. And then is the town employees' salaries is $11,000. We gotta have a single audit of the FEMA work, which is $7,000. And then the listers have some consultants that are $8,000, $8,500. That makes up 105 of the 132. The balance is in the other line items, but they're small amounts. For example, the library is up $1,000. The sheriff is up $1,500. So if you add up the rest of the line items, you come up with a balance. But I just thought I'd go over that with you because that is quite an increase.
Kim?
We also have the fire truck
Oh, the fire truck,
in the
that's right.
general now and not the capital.
Yeah. Yeah, the fire truck came out of the capital budget and is now in our budget.
Yep, so that's 17,000.
And the reason for that is that's what the auditors want. It's not a decision we made, but the auditors, suggested or told us this is what has to happen.
So I have a question on that. I understand the reasoning completely, but since there's a change, how come nobody can send an email to us telling us there's a change? Or I have to read it in town report?
I didn't hear you, what was that?
I understand the total reason for it to be its own article. But being a change, how come somebody can't take 5 seconds and type up an email and send to the fire department that there's a change before we read it in the town report?
Tim, what he's really saying is that they were never notified of the change.
It wasn't a change in the dollar amount, so.
I know that, but it's its own article now where it's always been. It's
Well-
just a little heads up courtesy.
It
That's all.
really was still broken down within the capital, so it was actually its own item in the capital. So instead of just, and you can see.
It was, but when you lump everything in a capital, people aren't gonna vote it down.
What was that?
The way I said, when you vote, when you,
Everything's all lumped together.
you
It's
stand up,
different than when it's separate. I'm just, I don't care, it's fine that it's its own article, I just don't know why we didn't get a heads up, that's all.
We just probably just did what exactly the bill auditor told us you have to, and during the rest of it, we just went ahead and did it. And my assumption was is what's voted on the capital budget is per item, because that's what committee votes, that's what we're voting on. And we keep it that way when we do the budget. So even though it's a lump number, we still have to commit to that amount for the top. So just move to an article, committed to the same amount.
Right, but then everything that's in the capital budget should be its own article too.
It is, it's broken out. Well, it's broken out.
And not completely, no, because when the excavator was bought, it was lumped into there, and that should have been its own article.
So you look at the humanitarians and they're the same way. We've got one lump sum, but each person gets, each humanitarian gets just that dollar amount.
I understand that, and that's not what I'm asking, I'm just asking why there wasn't a courtesy.
It was just, flow, the meetings and flow of the budget and the audit all at the same time. Apologize, not let me know.
On page 17,
page what?
page 17, there was a transfer to ARPA fund. Is that the same thing that showing as an unfavorable thing? I don't have a paper or a picture.
Said he's mentioning the transfer to ARPA fund.
Transfer to ARPA. That's the rescue plan, what's that kind of spot? Showing as an unfavorable.
No, I don't know what it says.
Okay, it doesn't-
Oh, yeah, Kim,
No,
that,
I'm sorry, that, you're in the expenditure. So
those are the,
that's the negative.
huh?
It's a negative in the expenditure.
Right.
Did somebody ask us what was asked and answered?
So can you repeat what was asked?
We have no idea what.
Oh, the question was, the transfer of the ARPA funds
On page 17.
on page 17. There's an actual of 220,000 on change, and then it's a variable unfavorable of 220,000.
So, expensive.
That was part of the ARPA funds that we had taken in the year before. And then we finished off the ARPA funds using the ARPA funds in
Okay,
the town hall.
okay, so that's the short word.
It
Okay,
was for 1 year, other year.
thank you.
Anything else?
I'm just to give you an update on the Walker Bridge, how that stands. The construction started in the spring of '24 and went through the summer and the late fall. And by then they had finished everything except the final coat of paving and some landscaping. it looks to me like the total cost of the whole project is gonna be close to $9 million, which our share is 10%, which would be 900,000. We have paid a little over 800,000 already of it, but we will not know what the balance is until they finished in the summer. There's a couple of problems that I have seen down on the bridge, and I think other people have too. And one of them is when you come off of Fisher Hill Road, you look east and you can't see any traffic coming because the guide rails are too high. And so that creates a problem. And the other problem is also coming off Fisher Hill. If you have a trailer behind you, a truck and trailer, when you go out into the road, if you stay in your lane, both vehicles, the trailer and the truck, are not going to be on the tar. One of them is going to be off the road. So I have asked them to look into that matter, and I'm waiting for a reply. The other thing, I don't know why that was changed to a stop sign from a yield sign too, and he's looking at that. But that's where we stand on that. There was a survey sent out to different people in town, and they had, I don't know, 39, 40 responses to it, but the survey was mainly for traffic. What you thought of the traffic while they were working, the delays and whatever, and that was all it covered, so.
When do you expect to get an answer, John? When do you hope to hear an answer?
Well, Morgan's called them 3, 4 times on that.
That's a pretty serious.
They said that they would look at it, and they're not done the project, so they're not going anywhere yet, but they will address that. So the road's gonna be built up. The guardrails, I know they can't shorten them, because that's a standard site, so, but you just can't see it there.
Yes, to add to that, as you know, once that bamboo or whatever that stuff turns up, along with that, or whatever, along with that guardrail, you're not gonna see nothing around that corner.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just, town will just have to maintain that more frequently as for safety.
But for 100 years, you have not stopped there, and when you come down from Grafton, you have not come there and then made a left-hand, right-hand turn. And they just go off towards the other traffic coming, so that's gonna be a problem too until people get used to it.
I do want to say one thing about the Walker Bridge. I still don't know how she did it, but Kim was able to take the funds from various special accounts to keep up with the payments for the Walker Bridge that will be reimbursed when the bond is issued. But as a result, we didn't have to borrow any money from the bank, which saved the town a considerable amount of money. And I know I was in there, and John was in there, and the other board members were there. And well, Kim, can we pay the bills today? Yep, we can. And looking, and then the taxes started to come in, and it seemed like we were just ready to borrow the money, and then all of a sudden more money would come in from a grant. And remember, we still haven't got our full payment from FEMA and the state, so that's another thing that we had to pay ourselves. So the effort by Kim to move this money around saved the town some considerable amount of money and interest.
I can give you an update on FEMA. We have been paid by FEMA for every project that we have completed. We have 2 projects that we have not started yet, which will total close to $1 million. And they are scheduled for August and September of this year. We have not received the state share of 7.8% either, so that's 100 or some odd thousand. And we have not received our administrative fees, which we will not get those till every project is finished. So that is where we stand with them.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Dave.
Job, state, you're doing good, thank you very much. I know how.
We try. It's frustrating at times, believe me, particularly when you're dealing with FEMA and the state. So,
And a lot of credit has to go to our town administrator for keeping us updated on all the grants coming through, and she's done a lot of research on what's out there for the town. And we couldn't be here today without Morgan. Hey.
any other questions, comments? We do have a public comments section here. If there are any public comments. If not, I guess we'll go into the candidates forum. We have a couple of people running positions. I'll turn it over, since I'm one of them, I'll turn it over to Kathy to run the forum.
Yeah, so those candidates want to come up to the table and we'll just move out. And I'm gonna ask the audience if they have any questions of the candidates. Candidates can start by briefly telling us why they want to be on the board. And some background information. That'll be very helpful. Thanks.
Push it again. Okay.
Start.
Whatever you want. Should I start?
Go ahead, sure.
Hi, most of you know who I am, but for the ones who don't, my name is Joe Polio. I live on Middletown Road, and I've been a resident of Grafton since 1979. I took a little vacation and went to Florida for 11 years, and then came back in 2013. When I came to Grafton, my experiences, I was an auditor for 3 years. I served on the planning commission for 3 years. And I have served now 20 years as a selectman. Term before I left to Florida and the term after. I love the town. I have no personal agendas. We have some business that I'd like to, if I'm reelected, to continue. We have the short-term rentals and we have some other issues that the town is facing. And we have a young board. Anna hasn't even gone through a whole year yet. Steve is completing his first year, and then we have Kathy, who's been here on the board now for, I don't know,
My
7 years, so she has great experience. And of course, the person who has the most experience and one who I look to personally as the chair is to John Gregory. I mean, he's not only has he served over 20 years, but John has been a road foreman for 14 years, so he knows it all. So I just hope that you like what I have done over the years and vote for me on March 3rd or whatever the town meeting date is. Fourth.
All right, can you all hear me? So my name is Warren Fisher. I appreciate the chance to introduce myself today. Most of you all know me as Buzz. It's been my nickname since I was very young. I grew up here. I went to school here, though not in this building. It's very different than when I went to school here. Usually to introduce myself, I know many of you, but not all of you. To explain my place in the Grafton history, I can say I'm B. Fisher's youngest son or youngest child. And that usually cements me right away with most people that have been in Grafton a long time. So I did join the Navy when I was 17 and I left Grafton. Wanted to, experience a little bit of, life outside. I did 6 years in the Navy on submarines and then spent a few months in Grafton and then went to work in California because I'd never been there before. So I took my skis and my clothes and drove across country for the first time ever. And I spent about 14 years in California, in the Bay Area and Sacramento, working in the technical industry. And then moved to Texas in 2000, also working in the technical industry. My background, once I got out of the Navy, is in project management and line management, mainly project management, program management, including a fairly long spell with IBM, about 11 years working for IBM. And I implement projects, right? And I think that's good experience for working on budgets, for doing risk management, risk mitigation, coming up with a plan to solve problems. That's what a project is. My specialty was facility management, space management, lease management, and implementing those for enterprise-sized companies worldwide. And so there are a lot of challenges there that I think would translate with that experience. I had the opportunity to move back to Grafton about 2 years ago. So I'm back on Fisher Hill on the farm where I grew up. And it's great to be back. I've been able to spend a lot of time with extended family, many of which are here. My two daughters are in there as well. One sitting in the back is working here right now in the area. And then my youngest is down in Cambridge working on her PhD. So, time with family is, very important to me. But being back here in Grafton, where I grew up, and in Vermont, a place I love, is fantastic. I joined the Planning Commission, or I was appointed, I should say, to the Planning Commission last year. I've spent a year doing that and learning a lot about various issues. I know a lot more about wastewater management and treatment than I did before that. And it is a tough subject for small rural towns. There are no easy answers, just a lot of challenges. But yeah, I think there are some things that can be done. I had the opportunity to join the volunteer fire department. Robert Sprague enlisted me a little bit. I did tell him I'm a bit past wanting to run into a burning building, but he said if you can drive a truck and operate a pump, which I can, he could use me. And that would free somebody else up that was ready to run into those burning buildings. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve the community in that way. Working with the fire department on the planning commission, and I've been able to learn a lot about issues and concerns that way. Do I have all the answers for those issues and concerns? No, but I have some ideas, and I have a lot of experience in managing problems and trying to find solutions. So, I think, again, small towns like Grafton have a lot of challenges. Listening to the challenges the school faces and the reducing size of the student body, and what can you do to address that, and that directly impacts how your taxes are going to roll out year by year. I think the outreach to homeschoolers, absolutely. That should be right on the top of the list, right? How do you get that number up? And it's great to hear there are some homeschoolers that have come back to the school. And I think some of the opportunities the school offers, Jim, some of the programs, the ski program that the school still offers that I did when I was a kid, those are things that might pull them back in. So, let's, do that outreach and things like that. So, I appreciate the time from the select board to reintroduce myself to Grafton, and I hope you'll vote for me, and then I will commit to do my best for you. Thank you.
So if folks have questions for either candidate, raise your hand and I'll call on you.
You must cover it all.
I guess.
Candidates here, so.
If there are no questions, thank you for coming for both the select board and the school board presentation. Don't forget, town meeting is coming up on Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Is it Wednesday? Tuesday, sorry, Tuesday, 10 o'clock. And, I hope everybody will be here. Thank you for coming. And we need a motion to adjourn.
So
Somebody make a motion.
motion to adjourn.
Need a second? Second. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Recording stopped.